it's a total embarrassment, the whole democratic system. That's why I just say to people, don't vote. There's no point in doing it. It is pointless, right? And this is where I then disagree. It's funny, there was with people like Nick Fuentes, for example, is because ultimately, and it's quite funny, in the UNN chat last night, I just happened to see someone atted me, and I just happened to be on my phone at the time, and I saw someone had atted me, and it was a Nick Fuentes cultist fanboy cuck, basically, who again the Fuentes people, like the sort of MAGA people, the QAnon people, they're total cultist cucks, basically, and will defend anything that their dear leader says or does. And he was claiming that I was a hypocrite in some way, because simply what I did was, what I think I understood was that I had shared on my Telegram channel a recent Nick Fuentes video, even though I Fuentes is being brought in from the cold, essentially, because obviously the flack of the great noticing of, like, the Israel lobby, for example, is getting too well noticed. I think the real reason, because at the end of the day, they can just do to Nick Fuentes like they did with the BNP, like they did with any kind of real controversial people that the state found difficult to deal with. They will just suppress them. They'll even just kill them if they have to, right? But the fact that he has been let in from the cold, and especially go on to Tucker Carlson, who I sincerely do believe is a CIA asset. His dad was CIA. His son is working with a CIA asset, i.e. Peter Thiel. I do believe that Tucker Carlson is essentially Operation Mockingbird 2.0, because instead of the traditional media, the mainstream media, which was Mark 1 of Operation Mockingbird, Mark 2 is simply the continuation, but now in the alternative media sphere, because the alternative media is taking over the mainstream media. It's bigger than the mainstream media. Look at the number one podcast in the world. It was or is Joe Rogan, and Tucker Carlson and people like Candace Owens and all of that are in alternative media, and they are the biggest viewers, really, more so than any of the traditional media like CNN or Fox News or anything like that. I mean, only boomers really watch those two programs anymore, those two news organizations. But I don't trust Candace. I don't trust Tucker. I don't trust Ben Shapiro, these biggest people. I think that they're all some kind of intelligence assets. And I think that Nick Fuentes is allowed to exist on the Rumble platform because Rumble was created as a, how can I say it, an Operation Trust kind of platform, where, as Lenin said, what did he say, to control the opposition, we'll simply control it ourselves, or simply create it ourselves. And that is what Rumble is. It is believed to be an alternative for truthers. But you look at the people who invested into Rumble. It's JD Vance, it's Peter Thiel, it's Dan Bongino, it's all the kind of establishment, or not so obvious establishment people who invested money into it. So if they wanted to, they could just simply kick Nick Fuentes off. But they don't, because Nick Fuentes' solutions ultimately is believing in the system still. In the sense that I believe that there are some people out there, especially it's very boomer minded, that there's nothing wrong with the system. The system is still on our side. The police are on our side. Whatever, the vote. There's nothing wrong with the system, the voting system. It's just the people. It's just the people that are the problem. Whereas I believe the truth is, and I think anyone with a functioning brain understands, that it's the system itself that is broken. And it doesn't matter who goes who, no matter how good of a person they are. Look at Thomas Massey, for example. He's probably the only decent politician in the Western world that I can think of, top of my head, like in an elected position. I mean, right? He can't get anything done. Ron Paul famously had this same problem, couldn't get anything done, ran for president, totally sticks, totally done over. It just doesn't matter. The system is totally against the people. But Nick Fuentes' solution is, oh, we just have to get into the system. We just have to get that. We just have to infiltrate. We just have to take over. Now, people might say, oh, but David Clues's solution is infiltrate, reform. David Clues is under no delusion that even if we got 30 to 40, we infiltrated reform and managed to get 40 MPs, let's say, into the Houses of Commons, it doesn't matter. David Clues has said it doesn't matter because, yes, we'll have some voices in there that might cause a bit of havoc, but in terms of practicality of getting things done, nothing will get done. And it's only by going through that infiltration and then for people to have that penny dropped moment and then realize that, oh, it really doesn't matter. Because a lot of people, they survive on hopium, that they're just hoping that Farage and the infiltrated reform MPs are going to do something. They ain't going to do nothing because they have thousands upon thousands of these unelected civil servants that are totally against them and will perform skullduggery tactics of blackmail, of everything. Remember Matt Hancock? And they got all that. They sat on that video footage of him cheating on his wife with that secretary for ages. And then when Hancock didn't do what he was told, whatever he was meant to be doing, they released it. They have all of the cameras set up. It's only a matter of time before you F up, basically. And then they will release that. So David Clues, unlike Nick Fuentes, is under no delusion because Nick Fuentes is deluded if he thinks that, oh, we just got to get the Groypers to infiltrate the American system and then everything's going to be A-OK. BS. And that's why they've let him in from the cold, because he is a palatable rebel. He is a even Nick Fuentes says he's not even that radical. He's not. He really isn't. You actually listen. The only thing that people might consider Nick Fuentes a radical is because he says some edgy stuff occasionally. That's it. But he's just saying nonsense. He's just saying words. He's just being edgy. Being edgy is not being a radical. And that's why he comes off kind of immature and twerpy and all of that. However, he does say things that I do agree with. And that's why I shared this post. But the low IQ Nick Fuentes cuck cultist guy doesn't understand this. And he gets think, oh, you're a hypocrite. You're now supporting Nick Fuentes, even though you said, no, I stand by everything I said. That the original post that I put was that people have noticed ever since Nick has been allowed into the establishment club, essentially, not in the high tier club, but in the sort of low tier economy club of the establishment, the second class club of the establishment, where think of it like the Titanic almost, where they had first class, second class, and third class. like Fuentes is down in the bowels of the ship dancing with all the Irish. He's down there, right? He's down doing some jigs down there, listening to some fiddle music, right? That's where Fuentes is, in the establishment club, right? He isn't up there. He isn't up there with the proper elites, right? But they've let him in because they've realized that he's not even that radical, that he's still sending a message to young people that, hey, all you got to do is join government agencies and infiltrate and keep your mouth shut. And then eventually, when we infiltrate successfully, we'll turn this ship around. We'll turn the Titanic around before it hits the iceberg, and we'll make sure that it gets to its destination and to America First Land. And it's delusional. Again, different from David Clues. Same tactics of infiltration, but David doesn't believe that anything's going to happen. The only thing that's going to be achieved from it is that there will be high entertainment of that. You'll get some people in there, perhaps like 20 to 40 people that might say some funny, spicy things. But ultimately, once the Hopium people of dissident movement realize that it really doesn't matter, and we've got to stop signing petitions, we have to stop putting an X in a box, and we've got to stop paying our taxes and become totally ungovernable. That is the only solution. But a lot of people, obviously, who are very much brainwashed of decades and decades of, hey, you got to pay your taxes. Hey, your grandfather went and died in the bankers' war to basically put an X in a box, or what's the other one? Oh, Anthony Webber's going to come along and say, oh, sign a petition because the government really does listen to you. We've got to get out of that mindset and then realize that, hey, we've got to become totally uncooperative to the state. There is the social contract that doesn't exist is totally void. If a contract is void between two parties, then you don't have to pay anything. It's like it's like anything. You and another party, you and another individual have a contract that says that I will pay you this money if you deliver this, that, and that service or product, whatever it is. If the other party doesn't deliver on the service to a satisfactory standard or the product, then the contract becomes void and you don't have to pay. That is any typical contract. It will have terms and conditions. If the terms and conditions are breached, the contract becomes void. So the social contract, which again doesn't exist, but let's just live in the imaginary world that it does. It doesn't matter. It's void. It's been broken. So that's my stance on Nick Fuentes. I don't think he's the solution. I think essentially he is a useful pawn. I won't say useful idiot. I'll be nice and say useful pawn. And he is being used by the establishment that will eventually spit him out. And he might be, he says that he's on his generational run or push. But that, like anything that goes up must come down. And I foresee that that Fuentes is going to go way of I'm trying to think of Ben Shapiro now, really, who's I saw a funny thing. We saw about Ben Shapiro shared the Nick Fuentes video. I saw there's been, you know what? There's been these hilarious Disney Pixar AI trailers being made, and some of them are so hilarious. This one's all right, but it's very, very edgy, spicy, kind of racial kind of jokes and everything, and they are just generally hilarious. And I've been just laughing my head off at them. I've said here, the Daily Wire continues to lose views, subscribers, and money in wreck of the Great Noticing. This again, look. I do think that what Nick Fuentes is doing right now is ultimately good, in the sense that it's waking people up to, to truly the power brokers of the West, i.e. Zionist Israelis, or just Zionists in general. They don't have to be Jewish or Israeli, but people like the Ted Cruz's of the world, Gavin McGinnis's, the Tommy Robinsons, the Zionists, they're starting to notice it. But what I think is going on is that there is a greater agenda at play where the establishment, because like anything, what happens is that there is a genuine movement that first begins. Think of MAGA, genuine spirit of the people that genuinely want to, they want to see good for their country. It's just like, you can also compare this to Brexit. I'm trying to think of others, but let's just stick with MAGA, for example. Is that it begins first, genuine rebellious spirit that is going on. And then what happens is slowly, I think you could say this also happened with the freedom community as well over the last 5 years, is that it started off generally with great energy, great creative juices, in the sense that, I mean, I watched David's shows yesterday. He had a guest on. They were talking about, the music, the artistry, everything, the spirit. It was all raw. It made people more creative because it was genuine. It was true. It was raw. And that's what the establishment feared. And the same was done with MAGA. The same was done with Brexit. The same was done with also like the Ron Paul movement back in the day. And these things, as in the Tea Party stuff, and all of these things were real. But what happened is that slowly, what the establishment did, they have to do their own form of infiltration, similar to like David's idea of the reform way. They do their version of infiltration, and they slowly infect the movement. Let's just say with MAGA, and then eventually look at MAGA now. Look at MAGA now, right? It's the people who are taking over MAGA are Ben Shapiro, are Mark Levin, are Ted Cruz, are Dan Crenshaw, are all of these people who are just Zogbot Zionists, and now they're telling you what MAGA means, and MAGA has become MIGA, as in Make Israel Great Again. And it's just look at Brexit, totally destroyed. And that I can see that happening with Nick Fuentes' America First movement, is that eventually, unfortunately, it will probably be infected, because I think that the establishment are essentially courting Nick Fuentes at the moment. And unfortunately, this is human nature. This is where the quote, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And looking at the sort of individual that Nick Fuentes is that he is a guy with a lot of ego. He has a lot of character flaws, which, we all do. But he is a person I think likes to have his ego massaged. And I noticed that when he goes on the people's shows, such as Alex Jones, such as Tucker Carlson, that he can be bitching and whining about these people for weeks, calling them all sorts of things, that they're shills, that they're state security assets, whatever, like he's done with Tucker and all that. And then as soon as he gets on their show, and then they have a somewhat kind of boring kind of interview, especially the Tucker Carlson one, the next day, Nick will do his show and say, "Oh, he's a great guy. Actually, he's all right, man. Yeah, he's pretty cool," because he's had his ego massaged. And he may not know it. This may be a subconscious thing where Nick may not even be aware of what he's doing. I mean, the fact that his own supporters on his own Telegram channel, you're keeping in mind, Telegram is where the real dissidents are, let's be honest. Like, a lot of people don't know about Telegram, the normies anyway. The fact that his own Telegram channel have noticed, his own followers have noticed that his rhetoric has changed slightly, and they're even downvoting. He's getting more downvotes than ever. He's being ratioed by his own followers not on Twitter, where everyone's on Twitter, but on the obscure Telegram, where his hardcore supporters are, and a lot of his viewers are downvoting him. It's because they've noticed that he has changed his rhetoric on things. He bitches for weeks and weeks about people, goes on their show. Actually, goes up next day. Actually, he's all right. He's actually a good friend of mine now. So what the establishment have noticed, that they've essentially built a psychological profile on this guy, and they've gone, hey, if we basically, fluff this guy, right? We just fluff this guy. We're going to let him into our little club, third class though, on the Titanic, not on top with Billy Zane and Kate Winslet, who's not until before she's down there. We're going to no chandeliers, no fun. No, we're going to let him on with all the Irish down, playing the fiddle music down in the basement of the bowels of the Titanic, right? We'll let him in that sort of third class, and we're going to basically slowly infiltrate and take over America First. And then after we're done, we're just going to chew Nick Fuentes up and just spit him out. And that's going to be the end of it. That's going to be the end of it. But at the time being, he is waking people up to the great notion. But what the establishment do, they will, like with anything, like I noticed with Tommy Robinson, because Tommy Robinson came along after Nick Griffin. After Nick Griffin was the first person to talk about the Islamic grooming gangs. You notice two people appeared when the BNP was at was on its height or on its decline. Two people appeared on the scene. Stephen Laxey-Yennon, because he was still called himself Stephen Laxey-Yennon. Look at the old Newsnight interviews on BBC Two, where he was allowed on as Stephen Laxey-Yennon before Tommy Robinson, and Nigel Farage. And what they done is that they basically split the BNP, I think, into two sorts of things. Whereas Farage will take over the political side of it, and Tommy will take over the social side of it, if you get what I mean, the non-political side of it. So, and it was just split in two. And then Tommy, yes, he took on board the Islamic rape gang stuff. But what he did was, unlike Griffin, was that Griffin would talk about also the Zionist lobby. Bankers, he would talk about the power of Israel, the influence and all of that, as well as the Islamic rape gangs. But then when Tommy took over, all of that was then left out, and it became a kosher-friendly, kosher-approved message. Same with Nigel Farage. The party was taken up, but essentially a new party to replace BNP was created. There's a UKIP, or at least taken over, and no longer did it mention those other things. It started talking about just simply, the kosher approved stuff, and that's it. And that's what they do. They basically take over a movement and then they direct it into a direction that is where the establishment doesn't want you to go, and that's essentially what happened. So this is what I see with Fuentes, is that they let him in from the cold. Eventually, his rhetoric, his arguments will be taken over by other people. And you see this with Tucker Carlson right now. Since Tucker had Fuentes on, Nick Fuentes is starting to, what I've noticed, and I could be wrong, but I've seen that Nick Fuentes is starting to decline, whereas Tucker essentially, it's almost as if Nick went on that show, on Tucker Carlson's show, and simply, he may as well have just physically given Tucker a baton to say, hey, now you talk about the stuff I've been talking about. Because all of the mainstream media, even the alternative media, who are sometimes dumb enough to just do as the mainstream media does as well, all they're talking about is Tucker Carlson now, who for years never spoke about this stuff. Even when he had Thomas Massey on a couple of months ago, no, about a year ago, and then Thomas Massey said, hey, AIPAC, as in the American Israel Political Action Committee, AIPAC has massive control in Congress of both Republicans and Democrats. And then Tucker Carlson went, what's AIPAC? What's AIPAC? I've never heard of AIPAC. Even though Tucker Carlson has been the political correspondent of Fox News for at least 20 years. And you're telling me that he's never heard of AIPAC. I mean, either he's just incredibly bad at his job or he's a liar. And I think it's the latter. But to not know what AIPAC is, which is a massive influential political force in American politics, to not know that is to me just unbelievable, as in he's lying. So now Tucker is basically being molded into the kosher-friendly, well, not kosher-friendly, but the establishment approved, because they have to talk about this now because it is out there in the public. It's over on the internet. They've even had to try and buy TikTok over it. Larry Ellison has now bought TikTok. Larry Ellison's son, David Ellison, has bought most of the mainstream media in America now as well. And it's containment. They're trying to stop this message from going out. So they're trying to turn basically, okay, don't listen to Nick Fuentes anymore. Listen to Tucker. Tucker is the establishment approved dissident, even though Tucker has been part of that mainstream establishment for Or there's never been a time where he's not been in the establishment. His father, again, Robert Carlson, was it Robert Carlson? Was also in the mainstream media, CIA operative. And Tucker's now, people see him as a rebel, as an anti-establishment, counter-establishment figure. He's always been in the establishment. Yes, he's got a YouTube channel, but YouTube is mainstream, really. I know I'm broadcasting from YouTube, but I'm in no delusion to think that YouTube is somehow like, oh, is YouTube alternative now? I mean, it's not, is it? I mean, YouTube is the media, isn't it? It's taken over as the media. It's if anything, the mainstream, the thing we call the mainstream media is actually the alternative media now, really, let's be honest. And now the biggest shows in America are Shapiro's, are Candace Owens, is Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan. I know that's not news, but again, it's the biggest podcast in the world. It was first a YouTube channel before it went on Spotify. I mean, this is what I'm saying. Anyway, let's just put this on. I've been rambling so much. This I see. This is what's happening now with Ben Shapiro. So the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's news outlet, it's continuing to basically, it's in the death spiral, right? And it's totally just spiraling out of control, right? And it's losing viewers. I think I heard something like it loses 20,000 views or subscribers a week. I think it did have like at least 1 million subscribers at one point, its YouTube channel. Anyway, let's just watch this for a second.
Welcome back to Shapiro Show
from Pixar Animation Studios.
Wait, why is the number going down?
Comes a story about one guy.
Sweetheart, maybe the world don't hate you.
Maybe they just need a reason to like you again.
Trying everything.
Please like and subscribe. Resubscribe, pretty please.
Cringe, dude.
To win everybody back.
One subscriber at a time.
Yeah, it's he's losing it all the time. So I see a guest is a guest, which is really funny because I was speaking to this guest only a few days ago. I'm gonna bring him in shortly. Let me just round off my point. I'll bring him in. So what I'm saying about Fuentes is that, where is it? Is that I think he's been brought in from the cold. I think that the establishment are going to use him. He's a useful pawn at the moment. But I did share something which, again, I thought, well, yeah, it is true what he's saying. It's not solution stuff. He's a great guy. I say Fuentes is a great talker. He's a great communicator. He knows how to. He has a natural gifted ability where he knows what will resonate with the people.